Hey, so I've been asked to start recording a few more videos about stuff that's going on in the social entrepreneur enterprise space, and thought I would record something about a big announcement that was originally made a few weeks ago by the Dell Foundation. So everyone's been asking me about this big news. The announcement that they made that they will be setting aside a billion, yes, $1 billion for social enterprises. And really, I just have 5 words for everyone. Been trying to tell y'all. Y'all, of course, because I ran out of words. Really, what's happening is there is a shift that's been happening for years, but has really hit a precipice in the last few years, and is that foundations are really starting to put their money on systemic thinking and disruptive change by backing more social enterprises. And I think that they're acknowledging the incremental gap filler approach of many charities and NGOs. It's just ultimately not going to create the change that they want to see. And it certainly isn't going to create it in the number that they're wanting to see it in. So, no knock on our nonprofit brothers and sisters. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. But the reality is, the funders are the ones that created this, and donors, because they went to the whole overhead, no overhead. You have to be working on a dot matrix printer in order to really be creating change mumbo jumbo. Same thing with risks. So, and frankly, if you look at the history of charities in the U.S., they were meant to supplant and support what governments couldn't or wouldn't do, and not necessarily affect disruptive change. Another reason really is because a lot of our organizations are just run by, shall we say, vintaged demographics that don't really want to get away from the bake sale approach, is what I call it, or Lease Mentality. So what does this announcement mean? It means a few things. One, you're going to see more collaboration. And not just nonprofits and for-profits working together, but really working together in robust relationships. Because one, you nonprofits can leverage the fuller risk profile of social enterprises and really use them as a test ground for what you're trying to do, especially if it is a little bit more experimental and you don't think you can necessarily get foundation support for it. And then on the reverse side, you social enterprises can work with these nonprofits and leverage the grant funding that they tend to get, and the funding that they get from donors as well. It also means more PRI and MRI investments. And so foundations make program-related investments and mission-related investments. They're fundamentally what they sound like, investments into something that relates to their missions and programs. I talk a little bit more about this on the blog if you're interested. But what these are, there are ways for these foundations to invest in things that don't necessarily get run by 501c3s. Wonderful opportunities for our social entrepreneurs. And so the hope is, by making this announcement and having more foundations at the cool kids table, you will have some of the smaller foundations who were nervous about going through this approach, who will do so as they get private letter rulings, as there's lessons learned, and more is done in this field. The hope is that it becomes more popular, and you're going to see more investments to our social entrepreneurs. And lastly, I hope that this makes people more open-minded about mission. So my whole practice evolves around the belief you do not have to be a nonprofit to do good things. You don't have to be a nonprofit to do good things. And more often than not, when people walk into my office and want to be a nonprofit, it's because they think that's the only way that they can get funding, which is a mistake. And so it's really important when you're starting a nonprofit to be thinking about, okay, grant funding may be a great way to go, but what goes into researching those grants? What goes into applying for those grants? What goes into cultivating donor relationships, following up on donor relationships, and making them loyal in terms of their continued relationship with the organization? And so my hope is, again, as we start to support more social enterprises, people will dare to venture out and do good in ways that are non-traditional. So In the meanwhile, there's actually been several announcements by foundations very similar to Dell's announcement, which just basically again reinforces this change that we're starting to see. If you're putting an impact organization together, then this is something that you want to look at. Could we possibly do what we're trying to do in a way that is more social enterprise related as opposed, well, I don't even like saying social enterprise because technically a nonprofit. But you get what I'm saying, for profit related with a mission as opposed to necessarily being a nonprofit. If you're interested in the announcement, check out Dell Foundation's website. And like I said, the headline is basically $1 billion of support for social entrepreneurs. All right, guys, I'm doing another update. You should see a blog post on this soon. Have a good one.